It's time for Money, Power, Politics. And this evening, I want to think about this number, 22,000. That is the small number of people employers hired in the month of August. The same number that gave the Federal Reserve the green light to cut rates for the first time in nearly a year because they're worried about the economy growing or not growing. Well, this Friday, we're going to get the September jobs report and learn more about the labor market. Or at least we will if the government doesn't shut down. This is important. The Labor Department is now bracing for what would amount to a news and data blackout if Congress fails to fund the government this week. That means we might not see a jobs report or a non-farm payrolls report or potentially even the consumer price index, which is a key inflation indicator. And that matters, not just for economists or investors or the Fed, but for you. With me to help you understand it and what's going on in our economy right now, Matt Peterson, Ideas editor for Barron's, and Brendan Greeley is back, contributing editor for the Financial Times. All right, Brendan, for people who are like, I don't know, a data blackout, what do I care? Why should we?
The employment report comes out the first Friday of every month, is the single most important piece of economic information that we get. Markets look to it, stocks trade on it, the Fed follows it, because it is the one thing that means the most to Americans. It's politically important and it's also economically important because the one thing that we all understand is whether or not we have a job. The problem with the economic data right now, more broadly, is that it's been ambiguous. It's hard to tell what's going on because this isn't a normal slowdown where things are collapsing. This is an uncertainty stop. People don't know what to do. They're having trouble making investment decisions. They're having trouble making employment decisions. And that means every piece of new data matters. It's vital. We're waiting on it. And so this jobs report is actually particularly important precisely because we don't really have a good handle on what's going on right now.
Well, we have seen this president outright reject data that doesn't align with his economic narrative. Do you think he wouldn't mind these reports not coming out this week?
You know, I don't think that he would. I think he would probably be just fine with that. By the way, that guy that he put in place to fix those numbers is still not there yet and hasn't had a hearing scheduled in the Senate, so we don't know when he might show up.
So there's not even a new head of the Bureau of Labor Statistics?
Yeah, that's right. They've got an acting guy for the time being who, as far as we can tell, is doing his job with integrity, as you would expect him to do. But no, I don't think the president would mind if the data stopped disappearing. And by the way, there's a lot more numbers we won't hear. We heard that the Bureau of Economic Analysis, another part of the government, also not going to produce its data over the next couple of weeks if the government shuts down. So that's more inflation data, retail sales, things like that. So there's a lot that we won't know.
All right, here's something that's been swirling around my head. Former President Biden got hammered for things like the infrastructure bill, which was a long-term investment that the plan was to help businesses and the American people long-term. But critics railed against it for it potentially being inflationary. Now, let's look at Donald Trump's policies. Whether it's tariffs or mass deportations, could be hugely inflationary. Does it seem like he's getting a pass?
I mean, not in public opinion. You know, we've seen opinion of his handling of inflation drop. We're in negative numbers now, specifically on just that, on a lot of different things for him, but specifically on inflation. But I think one of the things, again, about tariffs, yeah, they're inflationary, markets are resilient, and they've figured out they basically know what he's going to do. He's going to declare a tariff, as he consistently does, and then he's going to let it sort of be walked back, and then we're going to know that things are about 10% more expensive than they used to be. People don't seem satisfied with that, but we kind of know what that system looks like now for tariffs. In March, we thought the world was going to end.
It's stunning to me that we saw business leader after business leader publicly railing against things like the infrastructure bill and what it would do to inflation. And those business leaders don't seem to be saying much now. But the president also threatened a new 100% tariff on foreign-made films. The film industry is one business that is still trying to recover after the pandemic. What impact could this have?
Well, first we have to figure out what the heck it is, and I don't think anybody really knows the answer to this question. He said the same thing in May, and there weren't any answers then. But somehow we're going to put tariffs on movies, so...
I have a feeling he doesn't like foreign films.
I think
Just
that's...
guessing.
He's not a subtitle reader?
Just guessing. You know, I'm not either. Okay. The president also says a top priority is to make housing in the United States cheaper, which is music to almost all Americans' ears. We've got a housing shortage. We have a housing affordability problem. But here's the thing. everything that goes inside your house, all of the furniture, all of the raw materials required to build that house are getting more and more expensive because of the tariffs. How does that help?
I mean, it doesn't. But again, none of this is economic policy. All of this, these announcements are about looking strong. Right? None of this is like, again, we're trained to sort of think about these things and their consequences on the housing market and what it's going to do to inflation. And he's not thinking on that level at all. He's saying, I call a tariff, and then he looks strong, and then it kind of doesn't matter. The tariff
and guess what? Then country leaders, business leaders come to him bearing gifts and say, please don't do this, sir. And he likes how that feels.
Yeah.
Okay, well, then between the tariffs, the labor market, rates to borrow money, economic anxiety is soaring in this country. As the midterms are getting closer, can Trump and Republicans outrun this problem?
Well, they might be able to gerrymander their way out of this problem, which they're certainly trying to do, get themselves a couple extra seats. But no,
Can I just make this point, even if you gerrymander? Most people aren't political. And the top things that matter to people is affordability. If people can't afford their lives, is gerrymandering really going to be the answer to Trump? People know how much the rent costs. They know how much they get paid. They know how much groceries cost. Lots of people that don't care about politics voted against Kamala Harris because of inflation.
Yep, exactly right. And they will probably vote against Republicans and the president by proxy in November 26. Yeah, they're going to have the same problem.
I think we also don't know how long it's going to take for the wheels to come completely off the wagon. You can do a lot to the American economy, but it's a big, resilient, productive, inventive economy. Mm-hmm. And one thing that we've never experienced before, so we don't really know how to analyze it, is what happens when you take a jackhammer to the American economy? How long will it hold up? We don't know.
A country of 330 million people, it takes a long time. Well, today, YouTube agreed to pay almost $25 million to settle a lawsuit that was brought by Trump over him getting suspended over the January 6th riot. Some of the money is going to help pay for the White House ballroom. Mm-hmm. This makes YouTube the latest company to settle and pay a big, giant sum of money to the president. What do you make of this?
I think the simple answer, unfortunately, is probably right, which is that it's just cheaper to pay him out than to pay all those dumb lawyers, It also, helps curry a little favor, which I'm sure that they will, cash that chip in at some point.
Except, here's the thing. There's no buying this president. There's renting him. And just because you settle doesn't mean he's going to say, OK, we're done. It means you've shown you'll settle and he could come back for more, gangster style.
But what if it continues to be cheaper to pay him off? These domestic threats are the exact same thing as the tariffs. It's a threat. It's the beginning of a negotiation. And you know who's getting the proceeds from the negotiation. It's not America. It's Donald J. Trump.
All right, these gentlemen are sticking around. But before we go to break, I do want to tell you about something that you may have missed last week. Late last week, we got some new data about how the economy's doing. The White House says our GDP, that is the total market value of all goods and services produced within the U.S., grew by 3.8% in the most recent quarter of this year. That is really good news. We definitely want the economy to grow. But in a social media post, our Commerce Secretary, Howard Lutnick, compared President Trump's GDP to President Biden's, writing the following, quote, Biden's economy could never reach 3%. Well, for fact's sake, that is not true, also known as a lie. According to the Commerce Department's own Bureau of Economic Analysis, where Howard Lutnick works every day, Biden's GDP was above 3%, not once, not twice, not three times, 6 times between the years 2021 and the end of 2024. It is not bias. It is not going after this administration when we tell you the truth, which is the opposite of what our Commerce Secretary did last week.